to me it just seems massively radical and deeply poignant and so obvious yet so hard to explain. This is just one of 20 or 30 talks that I've given, and each talk is different. They go into different areas. Has anyone got any questions about that?
Yes.
Yes, Veronica.
Yes. I often wonder, before your show, about this thing about, you know, when they say they go to the universe or light years and then people age. I've always questioned that. I never really bought it.
It's a scientific fact that if you travel at speed through the universe, you will change more slowly.
Yeah, but it's still a question for me. It's still a very mysterious thing. I'm still not sure what to make out of that. I can't draw, a conclusion out of it, I would say. Personally.
There's a couple of things. One is not to worry about it because you have to travel much faster than W7. You'd have to travel at kind of thousands upon thousands of miles an hour. But it's kind of scientifically proven. You know when you have a GPS in your car, a GPS receiver, that is picking up signals from satellites that go around the world. Those satellites travel at great speed. Einstein worked out, that you would have to slow the machines in that satellite down because otherwise the signal wouldn't make sense. And he worked that out before they could even launch rockets.
It's an interesting principle.
And he worked it out, and they set the rockets up in '75. I think the American Army put the first satellites up there, and they had that code turned off, and it didn't work. When they turned Einstein's equations on, it did work. So it's just something he deduced. If the speed of light was slower, if the maximum rate of change in the universe was slower, as you walked around this room, things would look very different to you. You might see someone at the bar, and as you ran towards them, they would seem to be moving more slowly. It's only because the effect is so subtle that we never observe it.
But I do have one last question about that. But biologically speaking, because surely that would suggest that you will biologically also change. How is that possible? Since we always are on the aging process, doing that, how is that the two of them?
We change, biologically we change because we're a bit like a car that's got the engine running. This machine here has got a fan in it. That fan's running, that fan is wearing out. So it's changing, and we say that the thing's wearing itself out and it's falling apart. Conversely, if we had a tree planted in the ground next to this thing, that tree would get bigger and stronger, and we see things wearing out, we call that aging. We see things getting bigger and stronger, we call that aging. It's hard to explain. We change because we're constantly on. If you had a twin, we could kill that twin and stick them in a freezer, and they would change a lot more slowly. It wouldn't be, there wouldn't be as interesting. So, any other questions?
So when you say about Einstein said, obviously, time is all. I mean, if I've got this mechanical device, that is just ticking round to whatever it's set. And I could be travelling at 3,000 miles an hour, but that's still ticking around exactly the same.
Yes, thanks, Tony. So you're saying if you've got a watch and you're looking at it, and you travel at great speed, you'll look at it and it will seem to be ticking at the same speed.
Will naturally still be going the same, won't it?
Well, actually, it's very confusing. It all depends on what's called a frame of reference. It depends on your point of view. It depends on where you are. In these books, they always talk about two spaceships passing each other at great speed. If they were passing each other at, say, half the speed of light, a tremendous speed, for everyone in spaceship A, everything around them would seem normal. Their watches, their friends, everything would seem to be changing at a normal rate. Everything seems normal wherever you are. Out their window, the other person would look as if they were changing more slowly.
Yeah, but your watch would still be the same.
Your watch here would still be the same to you. If you could look out the window, that other person's watch would seem to be moving more slowly. However, for the other person, the other spaceship, the same thing would be true. They would feel that everything was normal for them, but they would see your watch as changing more slowly. It's a hard thing to explain in detail, but it's kind of basically been worked out and proven.
It was like you were talking about the past does not exist, but it does to me. I mean, in a sense, that what you're saying about the watch.
Yeah.
My watch to me is moving at the same rate. My past to me is what it's all.
The thing is that when we
I
talk...
remember, falling on my bike when I was 12 and hitting the tree. I mean, obviously I can see it more vividly at a certain time. I may make up tales about it being gypsies who did it,
I'm with you.
all this, you know, but the fact is, I hit a tree and fell off my bike, you know.
The fact is that in your head you have a pattern that makes you say, I hit a tree and I fell off my bike. The reason I showed that Paxson and Howard video is because it really comes down to this question, does the past exist or not? And when I ask people, they go, oh, well, I remember this, and I go, yeah, but does the past exist?
No, it doesn't exist, but
right.
I remember things that happened to me.
I think you see how it's confusing. It's going to be absolutely...
But it's not there, like a big store of stuff.
Well, this is why I asked you the name of your first school, because what you actually really, I mean, I'm trying to be very scientific. I mean, I can't kind of get into the scientific community with this. I'm trying to get hold of people who do shows like this, and everyone kind of thinks, oh, it's unscientific, whereas I'm trying to be deeply scientific. When you talk about things you just talked about, what you are actually talking about is stuff inside your head.
Yeah.
That's what, if I ask anyone here about the W7, you might tell me, if I say, sorry, how many decks has the W7 bus got? You'd say 2. What you're actually talking about is a pattern in your head relating to the W7. You're not
I
really...
could have never been upstairs, so I couldn't.
It's a different story. When your freedom pass comes through, you can explain places like that. So what I'm saying is you have to ask this question, is there actually really a past or not? I know the idea works. I know that we talk about it. I know that we're so familiar with it. I know that it seems to make sense. And the other part of that question is, what if things just move and change? What if they don't head into the future, they don't leave the past behind them? Would that give us the impression there was a past? If you, say you had a bike at school and someone nicked the pump off it in the past, that's what you might say.
Yeah.
The reality is that as we're talking now, the pump is somewhere and the bike is somewhere. Everything's always just somewhere doing something.
And some buggers got my product.
Exactly. Well, you got to let those things go, mate. It's all in the past.
So, Matt, can I be sure now
Yes.
that £8 I owed you 6 months ago,
From the Sunday gig?
no, from whenever,
Yeah.
is in your head?
Can you see how the thing I'm trying, no, because the thing I'm trying to explain is so simple and yet so complicated. It's almost like walking down a greasy tightrope, you know, and in a wind with people who want to push you off. I'd have to. The idea's forming in my head slowly. What we would be talking about if you let me. I'll tell you the problem here, Peter. First of all, it's a hypothetical £8, so you're talking about a hypothetical £8 in a thing called the past that may or may not exist. It'd be much easier if you actually owed me one. That would be a lot, or vice versa. It'd be easier when I just gave you a £5. So F off. If at some point I lent you a tenner, then there would be a pattern in your mind about the tenner, there would be a pattern in my mind about a tenner, and there would be a tenner that's in a different place. It would be closer to you than it was to me. But it would never disappear in the past. It would never head into the future. It's just a thing moving from A to B. Yeah, if I gave you a tenner, I would want it back. If I gave you VD, I wouldn't want it back.
Yeah.
It's just
I think it's, you know, I find a lot of your theories, you know, entirely laudable, and you know, that you can say that everything exists in the now.
Yeah.
And that our concept of what was and what is to be is
now
a matter of the fact
mind.
that we are a functioning set of atoms, and we are present. But that doesn't explain. You put those 2 slides in about. So, say, for instance, somebody takes a gunshot at me from 100 metres away, and I see the puff of smoke, and then I hear the crack, and then it hits me. Those are 3 separate, or it hits me before I hit before I hear the crack, but I've seen the puff.
Yeah.
So I've got eyesight that's instructed my brain at a certain point. I've got hearing. Now those things I equate with distance and time, and all of these things that add up to make up those sequence of senses, and that's what I put together in my brain to think that this is how life is.
Happen, then that thing then happens.
Yes.
So
take the gunshot, the sight of the puff of smoke from 100 metres away, the crack of the gun and then the thing hitting me in the ankle or whatever. You know, how does that fit with your theory of nowness?
Yeah, it's very interesting. The bullet is in the gun. The puff of smoke comes out. The puff of smoke is always there. It's just it's squished up in the bullet when you're looking at the bullet. If you get a balloon and you blow it up, it's there. And if you stick a pin in it, a bang will come out because the bang is in the balloon. You put the bang in when you breathe into the balloon. So you've got to consider that there's a guy aiming to shoot at you. And I understand why. I've been here a few times. And he's aiming to shoot at you. And at all points, you exist, your thoughts exist, he exists, the gun, the bullet, the smoke exist. Even the sound exists because the sound is trapped in those vibrating atoms in the gunpowder. He pulls the trigger, he's just distributing these things. It's hard to do it without the slightest...
But if you take the idea of everything is in the now, you know, that everything is just the process of blowing up the balloon creates the bang. But what I hear in the now is the bang when it happens now. What I hear in the blowing up of the balloon is what I'm doing in the blowing up of the balloon. If I accept that everything is the now, then I have to accept that there was a now a few seconds ago.
Well, you say that now. But this is why I put that Paxman thing on, because you have to ask this question. I hear exactly what you're saying. With respect, in a sense, it's as if you're saying, I told him that I wouldn't, blah, blah, yes, but did you actually threaten to explain? I'm saying, is there a past? I understand everything you're saying. And I'm also asking you to consider this. If things just move and change, would you be able to come up with that scenario? Would you be able to say the things that you've said? Would you be able to hold the thoughts that you have in your mind? What I think I've seen, and what I'm trying to express here, is a perfect illusion. It's something that if you think time exists and you apply it to what you see, it will fit perfectly and it will seem to make sense. It's perfect. You won't see it unless you think about it carefully. And the way you think about it, you have to start off by going, I hear this argument, does the past exist? Do I have a reason to think that things don't just move and change? People say to me, you can't disprove time, you can't prove that time does not exist. I go, no, but you have to prove it does exist. You have to prove that as I'm chatting, what's happening is energy's coming out of me, I'm vibrating the air, it's hitting your ears, it's changing the contents of your mind. Nothing's coming out of the future, nothing's going into a past.
But that's why I said earlier that I find it is a very convenient theory to explain everything.
Thank you. It took a lot
no, but it is in that you say everything exists because it does and it is now.
Well, you're mixing a couple of things there because I've got no reason or I'm not discussing how or why things exist. All I know is they seem to exist. That's what I'm saying. They seem to exist. The next question is there also another thing called time? And what I think I'm saying is no, I think I can show you that there isn't, and that should simplify.
So your knowledge that is in your body, the things you know, are a result of a collection of experiences.
Yes, they're accumulated in me,
Over what?
Over Crash and Broadway,
over
Buzzrow Hill,
over a series of extant moments. Well, one extant moment that is constant.
If there's a thing called time, then there are moments, and this time thing passes. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you're saying. I understand the idea. You remember that slide where I showed you about ideas? Idea of the bus, idea of the tooth fairy. I've got the idea. The idea clearly exists, so now we have to check it. So you're suggesting that there's a thing called time that has been passing, and that's how I've got my memories.
I don't know where you get your knowledge from.
Well,
unless it exists in an instant and exactly.
Okay. Where I get my knowledge from, where any of us get knowledge from, if you consider, say, the Wright brothers building their aeroplane, they make this sticky thing with wood and motors and whatever else, and it looks quite feeble, but it kind of flies. The potential to build an Airbus A380 is there. The laws of physics are there. all of the material is there. All of the matter that makes up an A380 is there and it is doing something. Everything is always doing something. If we scoop things together, they seem to do more interesting things. So if I get something like, I don't know if this example is going to work at all. If I get something like this and I get something like that and I put this here and then I bang down on here, I seem to have made some kind of a machine.
Art.
Art, thank you. I seem to have made something new. I seem to have made something happen, but I haven't. Everything's always here. You have to ask this question, is there a past? What creates it? Where would it be stored? Why can't things just...
Well, when you have a lot of motion and an object just continue in a straight line and not change unless a force is applied to it, how does it know where it's been in the past and know where to go in the future if it's got no past?
So you've got an object, say, drifting through space at a constant rate with no force applied to it.
So it's going to stay continually moving in that direction at that speed. It doesn't know where it's come from until it can come in without us.
Yeah, so it doesn't know where it's come from. What are you saying that we...
Well, we invent the concept of time to allow for that, so we can define time as being that observation that allows us to know what direction.
Yeah, so we define time as being that observation. Well, let's consider this, let's wrap this up on the Big Bang. Let's say we've got Edwin Hubble, and he's looking out at the stars through a telescope, and he notices that all the stars are redshifted.
Yeah.
So they're all flying away from us in all directions, and he thinks about this and he does some calculations. He realizes that means, like an explosion, they were probably all in the same place, and then he does some more maths. He works out this was probably 13.75 billion years ago and writes that down, and we look at it and we're amazed. But what's actually happened is that he's looking at a telescope, the light's hitting his eye, he's created some thoughts in his mind, and he's scribbling around on a piece of paper with a pencil, and he's drawing some patterns and numbers. He hasn't proved that there is a past. I understand the idea, I get the feeling that there is a past, but...
I'm saying to you, the object, not mine thinking about it, not us drawing up a plan, how does the object do what it does without having, in a sense, its own past?
Yeah, I understand. So how could it have got there if it hadn't come from here and flown towards a place? If you were out in space, an asteroid whizzes by you, how could it whiz by you if it hadn't come from over there?
How would it contain the essence of the direction we should go in if we don't have a concept? We don't have a concept that it has a past.
We don't. If we didn't have the concept that it had a past, how would we...
Well, we explain the fact that it's come from a certain direction and it's going to proceed in that direction at that speed by saying that it has a past.
Yeah. So we can do calculations.
If we say there's no time, i.e. it doesn't have a past,
it
just exists for the moment, then it wouldn't be able to do what it does. It would just be a random...
Yeah, so if there wasn't a thing that happened in the past to make it doing what it's doing, it wouldn't be doing what it's doing.
Yes.
Okay, I understand that.
We know what it's doing because we see it doing it. But
the problem is, what I think I'm trying to do with these talks is I'm trying to say to science, I don't know much about this science thing, but I think you've got this thing in the wrong place. You've got this thing called time that you're sticking into your thoughts and your ideas. For example, here, this thing must have come from the past. And I'm saying, when you say the past...
No, I'm not saying it comes from the past.
Something must have happened to it in the past for it to be...
I'm saying the whole concept of moving in a straight line is dependent on a concept of the past, which we have to...
okay, I get it. The thing is, an object moves in a straight line. If you have this idea that there's a thing called time, this idea that there's a past, this idea that there's a future, you may start applying that to what you see and trying to make it fit. When you do that, you come up with questions like the question you've just come up with. I try to apply this idea of time, it seems confusing here, or I don't understand how this is passing. And all I'm saying, Rob, is it comes back to this question. I know what you're saying, I know you observe. Is there a past or not? If things just exist and move, would that explain what we observe? And what the conclusion I think I've realised is that everything around us is literally, utterly timeless. I have no idea how it can be that way or what that means, but I never see a future and I never see a past. I know I'm falling apart, we'll call that death. I know that other times when people make love, they create a baby and we call that life, whatever. But I'm an isist. You know, however it is, that's how it is. You have Taoists and you have isists. So I think it is how it is. And seems to me, I don't know how all of this can be here. I don't know how an object can be drifting through space. I don't know what could have triggered it off. But saying, oh, well, there must be a thing called time and it must have come from the past, is to me utter semantics. It's creating an answer out of words that actually has no meaning.
I guess what I'm saying is perhaps we don't know what time is, but we know what we define as time being a necessary concept in order to see motion.
Okay, we don't know what time is, but we define time as a necessary concept to see and understand motion and to do calculations. It certainly works that. If we say, I don't know what time is, it's like me saying, I don't know what the Loch Ness Monster is. It may be that the Loch Ness Monster is nothing at all other than a misunderstanding. So I don't think time is anything. I think that things exist, and they move, and they interact, and that explains every thought that I have.
I think that's all. I think what science says is that time is just change. You know.
No. Science doesn't say time is just change. If you remember the 100 slides that I just showed,
I came in late, sorry.
this is because I get so frustrated. I
Can you run through it again, just quickly?
Yeah, I'll just run through it again quickly. No, this is my point. Let's wrap up that. Science does not say that time is just change. Science says that there's a fourth dimension, that space and time are merged together. We may be able to travel through it, that it's deeply mysterious. We've got a stack of books about this thing called time, and they don't start off saying there is only change, it's always now, but let's pretend for fun there's a thing called time. The equation that I showed, these magnificently complicated equations, they're quantum physicists trying to work out why time has no direction on a small scale but a direction on a big scale. It's not. If they understood that there was just change, every object is just somewhere doing something, things would be a lot simpler. I wish I could go on.
Sorry if you covered this and I completely missed it. What are you hoping to achieve?
Basically, pay off the mortgage, get a bird, get over feelings of guilt about being happy in a world where there's so much suffering.
No, I buy into what you're saying. In fact, I buy into it completely, and I've thought that way for a long, long time.
That bird thing, or?
No, what are you hoping to achieve?
Joe, I'll tell you, I'm not quite sure.
The scientific community goes, God bloody hell, this guy's got a point. Let's change what we're going to do.
Yeah. There's a couple of things. One is that if in science there are people trying to answer questions like, hey, why does time have an arrow on a grand scale and a classical scale? Why is it reversible on a smaller scale? I think I've answered that question for them. They've misunderstood the thing. You know, when you look at Galileo, a ball rolls down around, water comes out of a jar, but he concludes that there's also a thing called time. I think I've solved that. All I'm saying is there seems to be a jigsaw puzzle that physicists are working out, the grand unified theory, the theory of everything. And all I'm doing is I'm looking over and going, I think you got that piece wrong. I don't know what the conclusions of that would be.
Right.
The reason I'm erring, I mean, when Einstein came up with relativity, he didn't really know. They go, why are you doing this? You go, well, I want to achieve that. He didn't know why he was doing it. He just said, this is what I think I've realised.
Yeah.
The reason that I put this stuff together was because I had what I thought was a moment of insight. The idea kept hanging in my mind, and I wanted to write it down so I wouldn't forget it over time. And you see, it was just fake. And so I wrote it down, but also because of a joke. There's a joke about a guy who falls down a cliff, and he's falling down a cliff, and he grabs onto a vine. And a guy runs along with a rope and says, grab the rope, we'll pull you up. And the guy says, no, I believe in God. God will save me. And he goes on to suit himself. Then a boat comes along in the water beneath him, and they say, look, come jump in the boat, come to the water. We went, no, I believe in God. Then a helicopter comes along with a rope, and he goes, grab the rope. Like, no, I believe in God. God will save me. And eventually he dies, and he meets God. And he says, God, you let me down. I literally trusted you with my life wholly. What happened? And God said, I don't know. I sent a boat with a rope. I sent a boat. I sent a freaking helicopter. And the point is not that I particularly believe in God, but if I get to the end and I meet God, I say, God, well, it's boring. You might say, well, I gave you that idea for the book. So I don't know where it's going.
Thank you.
I reckon that's about the biggest round of applause I'm going to get out of this lot. Later, it's been a real pleasure. I'll be doing some more of these talks if I can find the time.
There's only one last one.
Okay, I'll answer forever. Go.
No, I'm saying, it's going to sound really odd, this question.
There are no odd questions, especially from you, Brian.
What about from an animal's point of view? We always think from our own point of view.
Yes.
Because you see, they
But
have
my
different
gerbil-
emotions. You know, they perceive things, probably, maybe they perceive things. They're not even aware of time.
I think you're
Your
absolutely
point.
right. Can I just say, it's not that they're not aware of time,
Yeah,
it's that
yeah.
time does not exist and we wrongly think it does. There is time that they are not aware of. Okay, it's like saying they're not aware of the Loch Ness Monster.
You should have made it clear that from the start.
Yeah, I should have made that clear at the beginning where I stand. I know I've been a bit vague and ambiguous. No, I think you're absolutely correct. I think that animals are constantly in the moment. And do you know Eckhart Tolle, this guy who wrote The Power of Now? And in Buddhism they talk about it only being now. And what I'm trying to say is these people are more right than they imagine. They're scientifically right. And there's no confusion. But I think you're absolutely right. I think that's why cats. I read a book and this guy said, I've lived with several Zen masters, all of them cats.
Yeah, that's
Because
weird.
cats always
Like,
just
you know, microscopic organisms, or even like ants or anything like that, it's like they live for the present constantly, as long as they do something. I don't think
ants, yeah, I agree. I don't think
you know,
ants
I don't
ever
know, they're
plan.
constantly working and they're not thinking.
Do you mind, my little
They're
nephew,
there, you know?
Finley, was walking down the street with his mum and his dad or his grandpa and his grandma, and they said, come on Finley, we're in a rush. And he said, I'm looking at this ant, and they said, but you've seen ants before, and he said, but I haven't seen this ant before. And I think the other talk that I'm giving next week is that we shouldn't treat ants the way we should see them as individuals.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're very Maoists.
Very good.
Are you their sodium? Are you the Antichrist?
Very yes, I did actually have that Antichrist joke once. Was that from my set?
It's an old one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was linked to the one about printers and replacing ink cartridges. Not in the whole world, but just in this country. You think it's alright to replace ink cartridges in this country?
Yeah.
So you believe in re-inking our nation?
I do. The slow burn, that one.
Yeah, a bit like my life. Any more questions? I'm happy to answer. I know Pete wants to get out here.
Quick one, and it goes back to the things
Past.
changing at a different rate.
Yes.
When you move.
I'm all for staying soon.
So I've actually had the time conversation before, and
Yeah.
I stipulated this didn't exist as well. And the only thing that messes me up is the fact that if you've got two watches,
Yeah,
watch A and watch B,
yeah,
and you get atomic,
Yeah.
put them in a plane,
yeah,
you fly in opposite directions,
yeah.
and they've got 12 dials on them, and the time taken for those 12 dials
Yeah.
is the same time it takes for this bottle to fill the water from
Okay.
Larry's pot. And when you bring them back, this bottle's full,
Yeah.
one of them's on 11, and one of them's gone down once and is on 1.
Oh, I think I know this joke.
No, so if because they explain the change,
Yeah.
the time changes
Yeah.
as you travel at speed.
Yeah.
If we're not believing the time thing,
Yeah.
what causes, or how do you ratify the fact that there's nothing to cause that change of things reacting more slowly or more quickly?
Things move and change. These other slides we can talk. Things move and change. You remember that thing about the light clock? This was an insight genius from Einstein. You say, imagine a couple of mirrors with a photon bouncing between it.
Yeah.
Now, also, you can imagine the atoms in any part of you doing anything. Everything is moving and buzzing around. Everything's constantly changing. But the fastest that anything can move is the speed of light. That's it. With the question you're asking there, you have to break things down to the simplest thing first of all, and then look at them. If you just dive in too deeply, you'll never understand it. So next you imagine this box, this is the one box moving across at speed. The light has to now use some of its speed to move this way instead of just that way. Its change is smeared out, so to speak. So this clock, if it had a little counter that ticked every time the photon hit the top, would tick more slowly. It would change more slowly. We think that we change locally and that we change position. But in fact, all we do is change. I'm changing locally, but my hand's changing position. There is only change. And in this case, some of the change is being used up in going from A to B. So the example you gave there was kind of complicated. What they did, Haefel and Keating, I think it was, put an atomic clock on the ground, and they sent one around the Earth in a ship. Well, if they'd added up, remember those devices, they don't tell you about time, they tell you how much change something's gone through. It's going through. If they added up the change in distance around the world with the change that had happened inside the device, it would amount to the same thing. Does that make sense? So this thing here, stationary, might go tick, tick, tick. This might go tick, 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 slower. It might seem to be a problem unless you realise, oh no, it's also moved this distance. Does that make any sense? You just got to ask, is there a past?
Yeah. It does make sense, but essentially they've both been in the now for the same amount of, forgive me for using the word, time.
Yeah.
So they've both been in the now for their journeys.
Yeah.
They're still in the now,
Always,
but they're different.
One thing's changing more slowly. That's all there is to it. Joe, if you get an ice lolly, you get two ice lollies, leave one in the freezer, put one on the pavement, one will change more quickly than the other. It's not the same thing as this, because this is more intrinsic, but things can change at different rates. Get two plants, put one in sunlight, one out of sunlight, this will change more rapidly than that one. But you will never see a past or a future. That's what I'm trying to say to people is...
No matter what speed you're saying, it's still ever changing.
Yeah, it's just...
So that's the reason why there is no past.
The irony is that everyone thinks I've got a theory and I'm trying to explain something complicated. I'm not. What I'm saying is, this is it. It's here now and it's changing. There's nothing more to it. But people say, yes, but surely there's an invisible future and a past, an invisible thing called time that flows invisibly in a fourth dimension. And you ask them to prove it and they can't.
Take a person, for example, who hasn't got a memory.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay.
Well, that's an interesting one.
Say again? How?
A person who hasn't got a memory, who suffers from a memory lapse or whatever, they don't really necessarily remember the past.
There isn't a past for them to remember, but if you were to put your foot in some mud, this is the thing, we have to be really clear about this. If I talk about the glass, I can talk about the glass, it makes sense because there is a glass. If I talk about the
was
glass.
more to do with the fact that that person wouldn't be able to store any
Yes.
accumulated memory.
So what I'm saying is this, if I can give you, if I can explain that,
right now. Living in a timeless world.
How are they?
Imagine this, if you put your foot in some mud, it will make a footprint. That would be impression, so you can see that there. If you put your foot in some quicksand, there would be a footprint, but as you pull your foot out, that impression would dissolve more quickly. So I think someone with a very bad memory, they just lose impressions more rapidly. But they're never remembering the past. There isn't a past, they're just having an impression made in their mind that fades more rapidly. Okay, listen, Pete has got to get home to Cambridge. But we can have this conversation upstairs at any point. That's timelessness. Thank you very much indeed. See you around.
That was absolutely brilliant.
Excellent.
My answer.
It's cool.
I've always thought that.
It would be very boring. There'd be no past and no future and no...
I say, I have had a conversation about time not existing, it's just another communication.
Yes.
But the topic still isn't the case.
No.